"You need to hear this," Ethan Blackwell muttered into his phone, his voice sharp yet filled with disbelief as he stared out over the city skyline, the twilight casting long shadows over the sleek glass of his penthouse, knowing that nothing could have prepared him for the words he had just heard. 15 months after the divorce, he had thought life had settled into a rhythm of controlled solitude, punctuated only by the occasional board meeting or charity gala. Yet now this single phone call threatened to unravel everything, because Gabrielle Monroe, the woman he had once vowed to love and the mother of his child who had quietly walked away without explanation, had not only left a void in his life but had also kept a secret that would change the trajectory of both their futures. And as he paced along the polished marble floor, the city lights reflecting in his thoughtful gaze, he recalled the countless nights of silence, the moments when he wondered if he had made mistakes or if the timing had simply been cruel, and now, knowing that the message conveyed by the calm, professional voice on the other end of the line named him as the father of a child he had not been aware of, every memory surged forward with renewed intensity, every emotion he had carefully compartmentalized demanded recognition, and he felt the weight of responsibility pressing down alongside a confusing blend of shock, pride, and lingering affection. Gabrielle, miles away, had been managing her life with the quiet determination that Ethan had always admired, balancing the responsibilities of her career, her home, and her child with a grace that he had once thought only belonged to women in stories. And as she prepared dinner in her modest kitchen, the simple act of setting the table reminded her that life's small rituals often carried the most profound meaning. The anticipation of the evening clouded by the thought that the man who had once been her world might be reaching into her present with a force she could neither predict nor control. Ethan's mind raced with questions, the kind that had no easy answers, and yet he knew that the path forward required delicacy, understanding, and courage, because the revelation of fatherhood was not merely a legal fact but a profound emotional truth that connected him inexorably to Gabrielle and the child he had never held. And as he stared at the city below, he imagined the life he might have missed, the milestones unseen, the laughter unheard, and yet he also imagined the possibilities, the chance to redefine relationships, to heal past wounds, and to forge a new chapter that neither of them had anticipated. And so, with a deep breath, he called the number displayed on his phone with steady fingers, knowing that the next conversation would shift everything, knowing that the moment he crossed that threshold of honesty and revelation, there would be no turning back. And as Gabrielle answered, on the other side, her voice cautious yet unmistakably warm, Ethan felt the surge of emotions that only the intertwining of past love, present duty, and future uncertainty could produce, a potent mix that defined the beginning of an unexpected journey where every decision mattered, every word weighed, and every heartbeat carried the promise of a story yet unwritten. And in that instant, both realized that life had a way of demanding attention when least expected, that secrets had a gravity that could not be ignored, and that dark romance often began not in the shadows but in the quiet moments when the truth first made its presence known, setting the stage for revelations, reconciliations, and the fragile hope that love, once tested, could find a new equilibrium in the most extraordinary of circumstances. Gabrielle Monroe sat at her kitchen table, sunlight streaming through the half-open blinds, casting soft patterns across her papers and the half-finished cup of coffee beside her, feeling a mixture of anticipation and anxiety as she contemplated the phone call she knew would come, the one that could alter her carefully constructed routine. And as she shuffled through the files for her child's upcoming school registration, she thought about how the past year had been filled with silent resilience, balancing work responsibilities, home management, and the quiet hope that her ex-husband, Ethan Blackwell, might one day understand the choices she had made. And when the phone rang, its familiar chime making her heart skip a beat, she hesitated before picking up, her hand steady despite the flutter in her chest, listening intently to the words that confirmed Ethan had been named as the father, a revelation that brought a swirl of emotions from surprise to cautious curiosity. And as she spoke with him, careful to maintain a composed tone, she reflected on the past interactions, the moments of tension and the remnants of affection that still lingered, understanding that this call was not merely about legal responsibilities but about establishing a new connection. And as she glanced at the small toys scattered across the floor, reminders of the life she had been managing alone, she felt a subtle shift in perspective. recognizing that the forthcoming conversations with Ethan would require patience, clarity, and empathy, a chance to redefine boundaries and expectations, and as she navigated the discussion, her mind considered every possible outcome. From supportive collaboration to careful negotiation of personal space, realizing that the path ahead, though uncertain, held the potential for growth, mutual understanding, and a reimagined relationship where both adult and child needs were acknowledged. And through it all, Gabrielle maintained a calm exterior, her voice steady and deliberate, embodying the strength that had carried her through the months of solitude, aware that this was the beginning of an intricate dance between past history and future possibilities, and that the story of their family was entering a new chapter, one that demanded attention, care, and the willingness to embrace both the challenges and the unexpected joys that might arise, a moment charged with quiet tension yet promising the intricate unfolding of life, responsibility, and connection. As the day continued around her, the soft light catching the edge of her determined expression, signaling the start of a dialogue that would shape the course of all their lives. Gabrielle Monroe carefully hung up the phone, her heart still racing from the unexpected confirmation that Ethan Blackwell had indeed been named as the father, and as she sank back into her chair, the afternoon sunlight illuminating the soft lines of her face, she considered the implications of this new reality, knowing that her carefully structured life of independence and quiet routine would now be touched by a new layer of responsibility and potential connection. She glanced at the small backpack waiting by the door, the one belonging to her child, and thought about the conversations she would need to have with her little one, the way to introduce the idea that a father might now be a part of their world, and how to frame it in a way that felt safe and reassuring. All while maintaining the sense of normalcy they had grown accustomed to over the past months. Then she thought about Ethan, remembering the complex layers of their past relationship, the mixture of shared history, lingering tension, and unspoken understanding, and she realized that navigating this new chapter would require clear boundaries, calm communication, and a measured approach. She reflected on the strategies she had used in the past to maintain peace and stability, the techniques of patience, gentle assertiveness, and careful listening that had served her well, and as she prepared to reach out to him to schedule a meeting, she considered every detail, from location and timing to the tone of her opening words, wanting to ensure that the first step into this unexpected scenario would set a positive precedent. She imagined the possible reactions, from surprise and curiosity to hesitation and guardedness, and she knew that her ability to maintain composure, articulate her intentions clearly, and express her hopes for a cooperative and supportive interaction would be critical. While also acknowledging the emotional reality for her child, she mentally rehearsed explanations that would affirm their feelings, reassure them of their security, and gently introduce the idea of a potential relationship with Ethan. She considered her own emotional readiness, the need to balance her protective instincts with openness, and the understanding that this evolving situation might bring unexpected moments of connection, laughter, and growth. And as the day unfolded around her, with the quiet hum of the neighborhood and the soft chatter of children playing nearby, Gabrielle felt a cautious optimism, recognizing that while the path ahead was uncertain and layered with complexity, it also held the potential for meaningful relationships, personal growth, and a redefined sense of family that embraced both past experiences and future possibilities. Her resolve strengthened by the clarity of her intentions and the awareness of the love and care that guided every decision she made. Gabrielle Monroe paced quietly across the living room, her mind racing with thoughts of how to approach Ethan Blackwell, knowing that this revelation about paternity would inevitably change the dynamics between them. She took a deep breath, reminding herself to remain calm and composed, to approach the situation with clarity and intention, as she thought about the conversation she would have with her child later, planning how to introduce the idea of meeting a father figure in a way that would feel safe and exciting. She glanced around the room, noting the soft sunlight filtering through the curtains and the small reminders of her child's presence, from toys carefully placed on the floor to drawings pinned neatly on the walls, and she felt a mix of anxiety and determination. Aware that every action she took now would ripple through their lives, she pulled out her phone and reviewed the contact details for Ethan, mentally rehearsing the words she would use to schedule a meeting, considering how to express her intentions clearly while maintaining the boundaries necessary to protect her child's well-being. She thought about the past moments with Ethan, the shared memories and the unresolved tensions, and she recognized the importance of acknowledging these emotions. Without allowing them to dominate the current situation, Gabrielle envisioned the possible reactions Ethan might have, from surprise to curiosity to cautious openness, and she prepared herself to respond with patience and empathy, ensuring that the dialogue would remain constructive and focused on the best interests of their child. She reflected on the strategies that had helped her navigate complex situations in the past, the careful balance of honesty, assertiveness, and gentle guidance that allowed for positive outcomes, and she committed to applying these skills as she moved forward, all while keeping in mind the emotional needs of her child, who would look to her for reassurance, consistency, and clarity. She considered how to frame the meeting in a way that emphasized cooperation and mutual respect, while also allowing room for warmth and potential connection, understanding that this unexpected development could foster a renewed sense of family and shared responsibility. As she prepared to reach out to Ethan, Gabrielle felt a mix of nervous anticipation and cautious optimism. Knowing that the steps she took now would lay the groundwork for a meaningful and thoughtful relationship, one built on trust, communication, and the desire to provide a stable and loving environment for her child. And as the afternoon light shifted softly across the room, she felt a quiet resolve, ready to navigate this new chapter with intention, care, and a hopeful heart, embracing both the challenges and the possibilities that lay ahead. Gabrielle Monroe took a deep breath as she prepared to make the call that would change everything, her fingers trembling slightly over her phone, and she rehearsed the words in her mind, balancing honesty with careful phrasing, knowing that every sentence would shape the first impressions and the tone of the conversation with Ethan Blackwell. She imagined his reaction, the surprise and possible confusion as he learned he was now named as the father, and she reminded herself to remain calm, composed, and compassionate, to handle whatever emotions arose with grace. She thought about the child whose life had just been connected to a man she once loved and parted with, realizing the responsibility that now rested on all their shoulders. Gabrielle envisioned the possible next steps, planning how to coordinate meetings, set boundaries, and establish trust. She carefully considered how to introduce this new dynamic to her child, ensuring that the explanation would feel safe and reassuring. And she reflected on how her own past experiences and resilience would guide her through these conversations. While still maintaining her own sense of emotional well-being, Gabrielle walked to the window, looking out at the street below, watching as the world continued moving, and she felt a mix of anticipation, anxiety, and cautious hope. Understanding that this phone call could open the door to a complex web of family dynamics, emotional connections, and newfound responsibilities, she visualized Ethan's face as he processed the news, and she reminded herself to give space for his emotions while keeping the focus on what was best for their child. She planned for practical considerations, like how to manage schedules, discuss co-parenting expectations, and gradually build a relationship that was nurturing and respectful. She also allowed herself to acknowledge her own excitement and nervousness at the possibility of reconnecting, and she embraced the idea that this moment, while unexpected, could lead to growth, healing, and a positive future. Gabrielle finally pressed the call button, her heart racing but her mind clear, ready to navigate the conversation with empathy, patience, and intention, prepared to listen, respond thoughtfully, and begin the delicate process of forming a new chapter for herself, Ethan, and their child, fully aware that every word spoken in the next few moments would lay the groundwork for trust, understanding, and a meaningful connection. And as the phone rang, Gabrielle steadied herself, focusing on the possibility of turning a surprising revelation into an opportunity for care, love, and responsible partnership, committed to making this transition as smooth and supportive as possible for everyone involved. Ethan Blackwell stared at the documents in front of him, the weight of the revelation settling in slowly as he absorbed the news that he had been named as the father, his mind racing to process the implications while trying to maintain a composed exterior. He imagined the life of the child he never knew existed, picturing small hands and bright eyes, and he felt an unexpected surge of protectiveness and curiosity, his thoughts spinning around how he would approach this new responsibility and the delicate dynamics with Gabrielle Monroe, who had carried this secret with such care and caution. He reflected on the past months since their divorce, recalling moments of tension, misunderstandings, and unspoken feelings, realizing now that the future held unexpected challenges and opportunities for reconciliation. Ethan considered how to navigate the legal, emotional, and logistical aspects of this revelation, planning how to meet with Gabrielle in a way that would be respectful and constructive. He thought about the importance of communication, trust, and setting boundaries while also fostering a positive environment for the child. As he paced the room, Ethan allowed himself to acknowledge a mixture of nervousness, excitement, and responsibility, recognizing that every decision he made now would affect multiple lives. He visualized potential conversations, imagining how to gently introduce himself to the child and how to explain his role in a manner that was reassuring and nurturing. Ethan also reflected on his own growth, the lessons learned from his past mistakes, and the need to approach this new chapter with humility, patience, and empathy. He reviewed his priorities, considering how to balance work, personal life, and the emerging family responsibilities, while also preparing emotionally to support Gabrielle through this transition. He envisioned sitting down with her to discuss schedules, expectations, and ways to build a healthy co-parenting relationship, emphasizing the importance of mutual respect and understanding. Ethan contemplated the possibility of rekindling aspects of their previous connection, not out of obligation, but through a genuine desire to create stability and warmth for their child. He made a mental note to take things one step at a time, to celebrate small milestones, and to be present in moments that mattered most. As he finally lifted the phone to call Gabrielle, his heart was steady yet filled with anticipation. Ready to embark on this unexpected journey with responsibility, compassion, and the hope of forming a meaningful, supportive, and loving environment for the child who had just become the center of both their worlds, fully aware that this moment marked the beginning of a life-changing path that would require understanding, patience, and commitment from all parties involved. Ethan Blackwell felt the tension in the room as he waited for Gabrielle Monroe to arrive, the minutes stretching like hours, his mind replaying every detail of the conversation he had with the attorney earlier. The news of being named the father had left him both anxious and determined. He rehearsed in his head how he would approach her, how he would explain his intentions clearly and calmly, imagining the expressions on her face, the mixture of surprise and apprehension. He knew this meeting could set the tone for everything that followed. When Gabrielle finally appeared at the doorway, Ethan noticed the subtle nervousness in her posture, the way her eyes darted around the room. He took a deep breath, stood to greet her, and offered a small, reassuring smile, signaling that he wanted this interaction to be constructive and gentle. Gabrielle stepped in slowly, maintaining a careful distance as she held her purse tightly, the air between them charged with unspoken emotions and the weight of past decisions. Ethan gestured toward the seating area, inviting her to sit, and she complied. The room silent except for the faint ticking of a wall clock. Ethan began to speak, explaining that he had received the news from the attorney and that he wanted to be involved in their child's life responsibly. Gabrielle listened intently, her eyes softening as she realized his sincerity, the initial tension slowly giving way to cautious understanding. They discussed schedules, expectations, and how they could collaborate to ensure stability for the child. Ethan emphasized that he wanted to provide support without overstepping boundaries. Showing respect for Gabrielle's role as a mother, Gabrielle responded with her own concerns and desires for balance, and together they outlined a plan that allowed them to move forward cooperatively. Throughout the conversation, Ethan remained calm, thoughtful, and attentive, aware that every word mattered, and Gabrielle gradually relaxed, recognizing that he was committed to being a responsible parent. By the end of the discussion, a sense of relief and tentative optimism filled the room, both acknowledging that this was the beginning of a new chapter, one defined by cooperation, mutual respect, and the shared goal of providing a loving and secure environment for their child. Ethan and Gabrielle exchanged a final nod, a silent agreement that while the journey ahead would have challenges, they were ready to face them together with patience, understanding, and a commitment to prioritize their child's well-being above all else. The next morning, Ethan Blackwell woke early, the sunlight spilling across the sleek hardwood floors of his penthouse apartment, the city below beginning to stir with life. He took a moment to reflect on the previous day's conversation with Gabrielle Monroe. Feeling a mixture of anticipation and responsibility, he dressed carefully, choosing a tailored suit that balanced professionalism and approachability, then reviewed the schedule of meetings and personal commitments he needed to address. knowing that his focus had to be split between his business obligations and the new role he was embracing as a father. Meanwhile, Gabrielle prepared for her day with similar care, ensuring that her child's needs were met. Breakfast was packed, and outfits were selected with precision. She glanced at the clock, mentally mapping out the timing of school drop-offs and errands, understanding that the coordination with Ethan was going to require patience and clear communication. As they each moved through their morning routines, the thoughts of what had just been revealed lingered. Ethan considered ways to engage positively with Gabrielle and their child, emphasizing support, stability, and consistent presence without overwhelming either of them. He envisioned discussions about shared responsibilities, educational planning, and recreational activities that would nurture their child's growth and happiness. Gabrielle, on the other hand, wrestled with the unexpected news and the delicate balance between personal space and collaboration. She planned to observe Ethan's approach, noting his demeanor and willingness to adapt to this new dynamic, while also considering how to maintain her own autonomy and structure in daily life. When Ethan arrived at the school to pick up their child, Gabrielle was already there, and for a moment, the world seemed to pause as they exchanged glances that conveyed unspoken understanding, a sense of tentative trust forming in the space between them. As they collected their child and prepared to walk home, conversation flowed about simple daily routines, setting expectations, and establishing a rhythm that included both of their contributions. They discovered small areas of compromise and shared decision-making that strengthened the foundation of their nascent co-parenting relationship. The afternoon was spent reviewing educational materials, scheduling activities, and discussing family priorities, with Ethan and Gabrielle learning to navigate the nuances of this new chapter collaboratively. By evening, as they prepared dinner together, a calm confidence settled in the apartment, a recognition that while challenges lay ahead, the commitment to mutual respect and shared responsibility was taking root. Laughter and small conversations filled the space, reinforcing the sense that their connection was evolving into something supportive and cooperative. And as the day drew to a close, both Ethan and Gabrielle felt a sense of accomplishment, not just in managing practicalities, but in nurturing a relationship defined by understanding, patience, and the shared goal of providing a secure, loving environment for their child. They retired for the night with the knowledge that the steps they were taking today would shape a positive, balanced future. The morning sun cast a gentle glow over the apartment as Ethan Blackwell and Gabrielle Monroe shared a quiet breakfast, the atmosphere filled with a sense of new beginnings and tentative trust. Ethan watched Gabrielle move with a careful grace, attending to their child's needs while he sipped his coffee, reflecting on the surprising turn their lives had taken over the past weeks. Their conversations flowed naturally, touching on schedules, meals, and the little victories of co-parenting. Yet, beneath the practical discussion lingered an unspoken acknowledgement of mutual respect and understanding. Gabrielle glanced at Ethan, noting his calm demeanor and the subtle ways he adjusted his plans to accommodate her routines. It was a delicate dance of compromise and collaboration, the child's laughter filling the space between them and acting as a bridge for communication. As the day unfolded, they ventured outdoors for a park visit, Ethan carrying a sense of protective attentiveness while Gabrielle encouraged their child's independence. Small gestures like sharing snacks, guiding on swings, and reading stories together created moments of connection, the child's smiles and curiosity acting as reminders of their shared purpose. Returning home, they tackled the tasks of homework, chores, and meal preparation in tandem, discovering a rhythm that balanced authority and nurture. Ethan took time to explain new concepts, while Gabrielle offered encouragement and gentle corrections, the mutual effort reinforcing their growing partnership. As afternoon faded into evening, they engaged in quiet conversation about future plans, discussing school events, weekend outings, and the importance of stability and consistency, each word spoken with a careful consideration of the other's perspective. Dinner was a collaborative affair, laughter mingling with stories of the day, and the apartment was filled with warmth, the previous uncertainties replaced by an emerging sense of routine and shared responsibility. As bedtime approached, they read together, a ritual that allowed for comfort, reflection, and reinforcement of the trust building between them. Putting the child to bed was followed by a moment where Ethan and Gabrielle sat in silence, recognizing the strides they had made in understanding, patience, and cooperation. There was a quiet satisfaction in knowing that the steps taken today laid the foundation for a stable, loving environment for their child, and as the night deepened, both felt a renewed sense of hope and commitment, aware that the journey ahead would continue to challenge them, yet confident that together they could nurture a balanced, caring, and harmonious family life, ending the day with a sense of accomplishment, contentment, and anticipation for the shared future they were creating.